Welcome to Your Healthy Kitchen from YRMC.
Welcome and happy holidays from YRMC's Your Healthy Kitchen. I'm your host, Rita Rubin. You know, when I think about cooking holiday meals, my favorite winter flavors and foods come to mind, including savory herbs like sage, rosemary, and thyme, rich and earthy root vegetables, nuts, and whole grains, and the warm, sweet flavors of ginger, nutmeg, and cinnamon. And today I want to share what I'll be making for the holidays this year. It's a delicious meal that brings in all the flavors and aromas of the season. And it features some new recipes, plus a few favorites that you've already seen here on Your Healthy Kitchen. So here's the menu. So we're going to make a creamy carrot soup with warm spices as flavors of orange and coriander and ginger. Some Anadama Dinner Rolls that are made with cornmeal and molasses and dotted with dried figs. Some homemade cranberry sauce. I make cranberry sauce every holiday because I love it. I don't care what the menu is. And a nice big winter salad with winter greens and sweetened with some pears and pecans. A wild mushroom risotto made with farro, which is an ancient form of wheat. And then we'll top it all off with some baked apples that are stuffed with dried fruit and nuts and ginger and cinnamon. Doesn't that sound great? It's a plant-based meal that's rich and delicious, nutritious, and a little decadent, just what you want for a celebration. And the good news is you can make a lot of it ahead of time. The rolls make the night before or the day before. You can even take those baked apples and stuff them and stick them in the fridge and bake them the next day. You can make the soup several days ahead of time. So it's a really easy holiday meal. So I won't be making everything on the set today, and you can check out my previous videos on making the delicious carrot soup and those yummy baked apples at YRMC Health Connect. I made the dinner rolls and the cranberry sauce and the salad earlier today, and we'll talk about each of those recipes soon. But first, let's make the entree. So it's a risotto, and it's made with farro instead of rice, and flavored with fresh and dried mushrooms, garlic, onions, celery, butter, and sage. Doesn't that remind you of a little of traditional stuffing? And it's got a touch of white wine and Parmesan cheese in it. So risotto, you know, it sounds and looks really fancy, but it's really easy to make. So here's the dish. Here's what you do. So any risotto starts with really kind of a basic recipe. And you saute some aromatic vegetables like garlic and onions or a shallot in oil, butter, or some combination, oil and butter. And you can throw in vegetables like celery, really anything that you really want to use to make the risotto, to flavor it. And then after you've sauteed that, you throw in a grain. So today I'm going to use farro, like I said, and it's an ancient form of wheat, and I'm using a quick cooking farro that's you can get at Trader Joe's. It's a pearled farro. It's parboiled too, so that means they've pre-cooked it a little bit. They've kind of cut back on a little bit on the fiber, not a lot, but it only cooks in 10 minutes. So it's a really quick dish. You can use regular farro too. It just takes longer to cook. So to make it, I've got my my onions cooking here in some olive oil and butter. I really like that combination for risotto. A lot of traditional risotto recipes just use a lot of butter, and they're very rich. I find they're kind of too rich. So I do a little combo, a little bit of butter, a little bit of olive oil, and I started that cooking early because I like that onions and the celery to get nice and tender. So I'm going to throw in a nice fat clove of garlic, and then the mushrooms. And I already cooked up the mushrooms. You can saute the mushrooms in a separate pan if you'd like, or you can throw the mushrooms in right about now and cook them along with the onions and the celery. But just for time-saving sake, I cooked them up ahead of time for us. So just some chopped garlic. I'll give that a stir. And the mushrooms are just some basic white button mushrooms. And then fancied up with a little bit of dried mushrooms. I found some porcini mushrooms to use today. And if you have dried mushrooms, just put them in warm water and let them sit for maybe about 10 minutes to rehydrate so that they get soft. And then chop them up just like you would, that you chopped up the button mushrooms. And that's all there is to it. So I'll just throw these in here. And like I said before, if these were freshly chopped and I hadn't cooked them yet, that would be fine too. So I'm just gonna let those sit and meld together a little bit with the flavors. And also show you a trick when you buy white button mushrooms. They are kind of porous. You know, mushrooms soak up a lot of liquid. And if you're sauteing them, that can really slow down how long it takes to cook because they have to dry out. So a great way to wash mushrooms is not necessarily under a lot of water, but just take a nice damp paper towel and just wipe them off. And that way they stay dry and they'll cook and brown better for you. So as these guys are cooking, when they get all browned, which they are now, the next step is to add some wine. And this is an optional step, but I like it because when you add wine to a dish, to the cooking, the alcohol brings out just some different kinds of flavors. And really hard to describe what they are, but it adds another layer of flavor to the dish. You can totally skip this step if you want to. But I usually use it, and like I said, just adds a nice different flavor, different layer of flavor to everything. So I'm going to let this cook just a minute until most of that alcohol has burned up and the pan is almost dry. And then the next step is to add the grain. So instead of farro, if you don't have that, you can use the traditional rice that they usually use for risotto, which is called arborio rice. It's a short grain rice and it's very starchy. And that starch, as the rice cooks, releases into the dish, and that makes it kind of saucy. And that's the nice creamy sauce that you get with risotto. It's because of that rice. You can use brown rice, but I would use a short grain brown rice because that's a lot more starchy than the long grain. It won't get quite as saucy as the arborio rice will, but it tastes really good. You can also use barley. That makes a lovely risotto as well, and it cooks in about the same amount of time as this quick cooking farro. So let's add this, and it's about a cup. That looks like about a cup to the dish, and saute it up a little bit. So what you're doing here is coating the grain with some of the fat and letting it soak up a little bit of flavor. And then we're going to add some herbs. And so with this one, you can really add any kind of herbs that you like. Rosemary tastes really good. But for the holidays, I really like using sage. So I have just a little bit of fresh sage from my garden. And I'll just chop that up real finely. You can use dried sage as well if you have that handy. Just remember the dried herbs are a lot stronger than the fresh ones. So be a little careful how much you add. This sage, it's about, I don't know, I'll have about a teaspoon, I think, of the fresh sage when it's all chopped up. And that's really plenty because it's a really strong herb. So throw that in, and I'll just throw in some parsley as well. So, you know, if you've seen other shows at Your Healthy Kitchen, you know I like to cook with herbs all the time. You know, they add amazing flavor, freshness, color, and also a whole lot of nutrients. There's tons and tons of phytochemicals in herbs, more concentrated than you find in any other vegetable that you cook with. So in addition to flavor and color, you're also getting a lot of nutrition with these guys. So throw in some parsley. I'll give it a stir. And then the last step is to add a broth. It can be a vegetable broth. You can use a chicken broth, homemade. You can use broth that you buy in the store. For this one, I'm going to use a mushroom broth that I just bought in the store. This is a great brand. I love Pacific Foods, and it's just a really rich broth that's going to add even more flavor to our risotto, even more mushroomy flavor. So the trick to adding the broth is making sure that it's warm or hot. This is just been simmering here, and add it about a ladle full at a time. Usually put a couple in first, and cover it up and let that farro absorb all that moisture and flavor. I'm just going to turn the temperature up a minute. There we go, and cover it up. So let that sit and simmer. I'm going to check in a couple minutes and just keep stirring in the broth. That's just the basic method for making risotto until everything is soft and tender. So let's talk about the other things that I have on the menu for this year. So my first and favorite thing to make every year this time of year is cranberry sauce. And whenever I see the fresh cranberries show up in the market, I start buying them and I put them in the freezer. They freeze really well, so I can make cranberry sauce or use cranberries all year round. I really like to stock up on them. So the cranberry sauce is really easy. It's just whole cranberries, and I cook them down with a little bit of orange juice, a little bit of orange zest, and a little bit of water, and orange juice, orange zest, a little water, and some maple syrup. And that's it. And play with it, because cranberries are kind of tart, or very tart, and so you might like your sauce a little sweeter or a little more tart. I like mine kind of sweet tart. And then the last thing I add to it are some toasted walnuts. And the walnuts kind of cut back on the tartness of the cranberries, because the rich fat in the walnuts helps to tone it down a little bit. If you don't have walnuts, you can also add a bit of butter to your cranberry sauce when you're cooking it, and that a little bit of fat just tones it down a little bit and makes it a little less tangy if that's what you're looking for. So you don't have to just keep adding more and more sugar. Just the fat really helps a lot. So cranberry sauce, like I said, I make it, I don't care what the menu is, whatever I'm having, I will make my cranberry sauce. So like this year, I'll probably put the cranberry sauce with the risotto. It's actually a really nice combo. And spread it on my rolls. So the Anadama rolls are, like I said, cornmeal, molasses, wheat flour, and basic dinner roll yeast, and it's got some figs in it as well. It's a very nice, simple, really simple recipe. Salad, I always like to have that at a holiday meal. I think it brightens up the meal. It adds some light flavors, because holiday meals are actually usually pretty kind of heavy. So I'm going to talk about my salad in a minute, but I'm going to check my farro and give it a stir. It's looking pretty good. But it's not quite ready to add more broth. So you really want to wait till that broth is almost all the way absorbed. And with the amount of farro in there, it may already have enough broth in there to totally cook it. But if I had a larger amount of farro, I'd still be adding some more broth. So my salad, yeah. So I like to really go and use winter greens when they're available. There's an amazing variety just available right here if you go to the farmer's market. Winter is a lovely time to find fresh greens. So things like escarole and endive and kale, those are real common wintry greens. Some darker lettuces, red leaf romaine is a lovely addition to a nice, dark, rich winter salad. I also have a little bit of my own escarole in here. This is the first year that I've gotten to grow a winter garden. So I'm growing my own escarole, which looks like this. Yeah, They're just small now. I'm picking them as microgreens when they're still tiny, and I hope to use them throughout the winter. They have a little bit of a bitter edge, and that bitterness is actually a sign that they're really nutritious. But because it's a little bitter, you might not want to make your salad all about the escarole or the endive. So mix some softer, sweeter lettuces in there, like butter lettuce or, like I said, some romaine. So I've got that, and I threw in some pecans, toasted pecans, add some sweetness to the salad, a little bit of richness because it's winter. Makes that dish a little warmer. I also threw in some parsley. I love doing that, throwing in fresh herbs. And parsley is available all year round, so it's a nice herb to throw in a winter salad. I'm going to cut up a little bit of a red onion and put that in there for a little zest and a little crunch and color as well. And you can think about that when you're making salads is all of those different features that you might want to include. What colors do you want to include? What flavors? What textures? It makes a salad really interesting when you have a whole variety of things in there. So a little red onion, and then I'll add some pears. You can add other fruits to this salad as well, like some mandarin oranges would be really good, or apple. That would be very nice as well. So some red onion, and then my pears. If you're making this at home, these are things you want to add really just last minute. The onion, if you put it in too early, it's going to overpower and flavor the lettuce a little too strongly. And the pears definitely want to add last. And the trick with pears is before you add them to the salad, is to also coat them with some lemon juice. And the lemon juice will keep the pears from going brown, because they turn brown really quickly. So just chop them up. I have a little lemon juice here. I'm going to toss them in a bowl. And that's it. And you can do that also with apples. That works really well. Little lemon juice. That's it. So the dressing I made for this is just a simple vinaigrette. It's a little bit of a shallot chopped up, some olive oil, a little bit of Dijon mustard, salt and pepper. That's it. And a little bit of, I used red wine vinegar. So just a simple light dressing that's not going to overpower all the other flavors in the salad. That's it. So let me check the farro. It's smelling really good. It is just about done. So you can see how the grains have plumped up, and the broth is almost done. So again, this is a quick cooking farro. So it cooked in a short amount of time. So remember, if you're using other grains like brown rice or a regular whole grain farro that's not the quick cooking type, it's going to take a little bit longer to cook. But one of the nice things about it, you can just leave it. Just come back and check it every once in a while, and just to make sure that the pan doesn't go dry. You can also cook this in the oven. Then it's totally hands off. You put in about two to 3 times amount of broth to grain, and all the other ingredients, just follow the same steps, and put it in the oven about 350 degrees, and it'll cook, depending on the grain, anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes or an hour. It just depends on the grain. So it can be really hands off. You can also switch this up. I brought my squash just to remind me to tell you about how you can switch this up. So you don't like mushrooms, make it a squash risotto. That's a really nice holiday meal as well. So instead of doing the squash, add cubes of sauteed or roasted butternut squash instead. So same exact steps, everything else is the same. And it's really tasty. Last thing is, when this is all done, I'm going to add some Parmesan cheese. You can make this a vegan dish if you want to. There's a bunch of vegan cheeses out there that melt really well. I happen to really like Parmesan in risotto. It's just extra special. So that's it. That's my holiday meal. And remember to check out all of our videos and easy, delicious recipes at YRMC Health Connect. And you can also follow me on Facebook at YRMC's Your Healthy Kitchen, where I regularly post recipes, photos, and videos of the food I make at home, plus links to my favorite food, nutrition, and gardening destinations on the web. So until next time, eat well, be well, happy holidays.